up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the CotAcasT. My name is Brian Bermudez, and I'm the host of the Craft of the Air podcast, the aviation podcast that expands your knowledge in each episode. It's bringing the untold world of aviation. Join me, join my guests, join us as we explore the untold world of aviation together. I have two very, very special guests that I've really wanted on the show for some time now, and I've had the opportunity to connect with two very, very special guests, and I would like to invite to the show Solano and Jesus. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and I really do appreciate it. You know, Jesus is somebody that works a lot. He has a family, Solano as well, studying and working, and I really do appreciate you guys coming on the show. But first things first, I'm going to jump right into it. I get to Jesus, and I ask you, being a veteran A&P and working for a mainline, being successful in aviation maintenance as an aviation maintenance engineer, what got you into this? Tell us a little bit about it and walk us through it.
Well, I always wanted to work with my hands. I knew I never wanted to be an office worker, nothing against them, but I like doing outdoor things. I like trying to fix something that's broken. So I was thinking about, cars would be cool. I've always been into cars, but I've always loved planes. So I'm like, I didn't even know that was like a thing. Who fixes planes? I'm like, they have to have some type of mechanic. And then I realized, oh, there's a school for it. I didn't know about aviation high school. I went to a regular high school. And when I found out about Vaughn, I'm like, oh, let me check this out. It's funny, after my first year, it was so tough and so different that I was second guessing myself. I was like, maybe I'll just go into HVAC. And I'm glad I didn't, because it's been a fun ride. It's something different all the time, and it's unique. Not everybody does it, and it's really actually fun to do. To this day, I'm still having fun working.
Let me ask you something. What was it like, first coming in? We went to, graduated from the same college. You graduated from Vaughn. And that transition from, you had that previous aviation experience, but then you go over and now, you're working aviation maintenance, you're working line maintenance. How was that transition? Was it everything that everybody had always hyped it up to be, or was it, kind of like, okay, you know what, this is aviation maintenance, or you hear some of the horror stories and you hear some good stories. How was it for you?
A lot of things was, the first year was difficult because it was so new to me. And all I kept hearing from professors was, this is a difficult industry to get into. You're going to go through many jobs. You're going to get fired a lot. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I don't know if this is something I want to experience. And then it was like, you know what? Let me finish this out. If you quit this now, you're just going to quit something else later on. So I was like, I kind of want to see what's the end goal here. Let me finish this out and see where it pans out to. And I'm glad I did. It's been really fun. No, when I first graduated, it was hard to get a job anywhere, actually. It was about, I would say, '08 in January when I got my certificates. And then I was ready to take my orals and practicals. And I was kind of done with school, so I was like, it's my fault. I kind of like laid back a bit. I got a job with Continental Airlines in Newark. Ramp, throwing bags. So I was like, oh, perfect. I'm in an airline. I feel good. I'm in the industry. Not exactly where I want to be, but I'm there. I'm close. That summer, they hired a whole bunch of mechanics, and I hadn't gotten my license yet. So that's what finally drove me to push through. I spent the rest of that summer studying like crazy. I took my orals and practicals, and then they still didn't hire me. So I ended up going to Sikorsky. That was my first mechanic experience. So that was interesting. Out in Connecticut. It was a bit far away, but it was fun.
Was there something that, like, pushed you or nudged you to kind of, look and strive for something else? Or was it something that you were kind of saying, you know what, it's this particular position, this job is not working out for me?
So I'm thinking, oh, it's maintenance, is all the same thing. So I was there and I'm doing the same. I'm repairing the same parts over and over every day. It got kind of repetitive. And I was like, this is nice, but it's not where I want to be. It's not it for me. Especially coming from being in the airport, seeing all the different planes. And so I was like, I need to get back into the airlines. So at that point in my career, I was like, where do I want to be? What's the best situation for me? So I came up with Delta as my number one option. American was second for me. JFK, I wanted to be in JFK to experience all the wide bodies and stuff. And obviously I wanted to be a mechanic. So it's funny, I got 2 out of 3. I got hired by Delta. I got hired in JFK, but I got hired as ramp. So I was like, all right, now I have to go back to the ramp, even though I have some experience. Not a lot. I was there for a year in Sikorsky. Nothing I could, hold my hat on. So I was like, you know what? 2 out of 3 is not bad. I made it in. And then 6 months later, I got into maintenance. So it was a little rocky road. I went everywhere, all over the country to apply, and it was tough to get in.
Switching over to Solano, an amazing student, had an amazing study habits, good work ethic. I could definitely see him getting out there, and I definitely wanted to have Solano on the show because I think he has a good perspective from students who are kind of just getting to that point where they're going for their licenses and going to get out there into the aviation industry and start working. Now Solano, I know firsthand, the specific preferences that you may have. Do you foresee yourself following in your, brother-in-law's footsteps, or do you kind of see yourself going to general aviation, or is it mainline's the thing now?
Well, I definitely want to get hired by a major, especially because unlike it was back in 2008, 2009, a lot of majors are hiring straight out of A&P school. So I find that a great benefit to myself and to my other peers in Vaughn College. We have so much opportunities, and it's great for all of us. I see other professors, like you, Ejan, Saleh, Magnowski. You guys have years of experience in the industry, and you guys tell us what a good career it is. So, we are on the verge of being good, straight out of A&P school. So I appreciate that a lot, that I'm in school now. It's going to be a great opportunity.
Solano, I love your take on this. We spoke about this before, you and I, maybe after class or so. But what's your take on, aviation maintenance and schools, particularly I'm speaking about schools here. Is A&P school, maybe listeners listening going into A&P school in other states, or maybe listeners in the tri-state area, how was your experience in A&P school? Has it been more or less what you have expected, or is it a little bit more difficult than what you've expected, or are your instructors, professors, getting you through the material that you need and teaching what you need to
have? Some professors would tell us that we have to be on our A game. Some of these professors were managers. These guys were big shots, and they would tell us what they would expect from us if they were still, if they weren't retired, or if they were still there. And as students, you have to just humble yourself down and acknowledge that, because these guys, even though they might be tough on you, they want to see you grow. Okay, and me as a student, at least personally, I can appreciate that a lot. I'm deciding this is going to be my career for the rest of my life. So, having someone tell me what I need to do and what they would expect it's great. It's a point of view. It's somewhere where I could stand and know and grow from there. So my professors never wanted to put me down. On the other hand, they were just giving me tough love.
I wanted to ask you this, being a veteran aircraft maintenance engineer, somebody that has ample experience out there, what's one of the best pieces of advice that somebody has ever told you, whether it was in A&P college or whether it's out there in the field? What's something that gets you through it, or something that you think about every so often, a piece of advice?
It's funny. I think one of the best advice I got was when I first got into maintenance with Delta. It was a senior guy, and he asked me, what do you want out of this job? He was like, there's two different types of mechanics here. There's guys that'll change parts all day, have a cushy 9 to 5. They'll do their routine checks, change parts. Or do you want to be the go-to guy? So he's like, you could be the go-to guy if you put in the effort. Or you could just, hang back, collect the check. And that really stuck with me because I was like, I don't want to be the parts changer. I want to learn how to solve whatever problem they give me. So that stuck with me, and I see guys who really put in the time and effort. There's guys that I know that are like geniuses, man. I mean, it's insane. I don't know. It's almost robotic. But then there's other guys I know that just come in, they want to do their 8 hours and go home. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, to each his own. But, you just have to realize what you want to get out of the job, and it'll come back to you tenfold.
Back over to Solano now, and I know we have similar backgrounds in the sense that we both worked with our hands growing up. Solano, I know you mentioned your dad a lot, working with your dad doing construction. Phenomenal work, by the way, that Solano does, and such a hard worker. But when you look at your experiences growing up in New York and where you are now, was it something that shaped you into who you are now and what you're studying, or was aviation in the back of your mind, or was it something? How did it come about? Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
It wasn't always easy. So, growing up in East Harlem, you see a lot of stuff growing up. Even, you could be a 10-year-old at a park and you'd see a lot. So it's something that you just don't want to be a part of, So, the construction career, I was 12 years old and I would ask my dad, I want this video game. Like any 12-year-old would do. And my dad, on the other hand, would come up to me and be like, all right, you want the game? No problem, I'll get you the game. But this Saturday, you have to come and work with me. All right, no problem. My dad was a business owner, construction owner. So he would take me and I'll be there 8 hours picking up garbage. I'll put on some gloves and I'll grab a black bag and I'll grab flooring and throw it into the bags for 8 hours. And then at the end of the day, we had a GameStop on our corner. So he would park, take me to GameStop, buy my $60 game, and then take me home. And I'll play the game for the whole night and day. So then little by little, I'm like, if I go work with my dad, I could get, my $60. So it was good because to this day, I know that when I want something, I have to work for it. And I have that understanding. So I see that in line maintenance, you can make a great career out of it. You can make some very good money. And honestly speaking, it would be great, just to be already working and making your own money. And, maybe we could buy other properties, in other places. It'd be great. Real estate, it's a wonderful job to provide for you and your family,
That work ethic that Solano speaks about is something that I could definitely relate to. It's an inherent trait for a lot of mechanics, especially good mechanics, working with your hands, being mechanically inclined, being able to figure problems out. And it's tough, being an A&P, you have to not only be smart, book smart, but you also need to be good with your hands and good at quick thinking. And so I was definitely, I think that experience that you've had in construction, working with your pops, and that work ethic that you were molded into kind of made you, the person you are today. Going over to switching it over to Jesus, what's now we go very similar stories. In fact, Jesus, you didn't. What's your backstory? You didn't grow up not too far from Solano. You guys didn't know each other yet, so it's like worlds collide. You don't even know.
It's funny. I grew up probably like 3-4 blocks from where he used to live. Yeah, I grew up in a really bad area. So it's going to be almost identical, but I grew up seeing a lot of crazy things. And I grew up seeing how some adults do what they can to make money and like I'm like, yeah, I gotta get out of this. So growing up, it was a struggle because we were like really poor. So I was like, what can I do? And not just to make money, but like to provide a better life for those around me. So I was like, I used to think, oh, you can only make money being a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. It's kind of how you grow up in school. You have to do 8 years of college or something. And, no one ever really told me about trade schools or, working with your hands to, I didn't know plumbers make money. I didn't know electricians make money. I didn't know any of that. So when I realized, oh, there's other ways, I was like, okay, if I put in my effort, hopefully I get something out of it. And so far it's worked out. So I work hard every day. Even now, I never get used to it to a point where I made it. No, every day I go in like I could be replaced like that. No matter how good you are, no one's irreplaceable. That's one thing I know. Because it's happened before. Guys you think are untouchable are sniffed out in a second. So I always go in with that mentality. I never want to go back to where I was. So I put in the work every day and hopefully, it works out.
Speak about so many things happening in aviation. We know that there's a job shortage. We know A&Ps can find jobs just about anywhere right now. We're getting paid decent amounts of money in terms of salary. Now, Jose, you've made a very successful career as an aircraft maintenance engineer on the line. People listening, if you don't, A&P that works on the line, that means they work at an airport with planes that are coming in and leaving. Most of the time, those positions are at night. Quick work that's happening during these the line maintenance positions. Jose, you foresee yourself staying in line maintenance, or do you see yourself branching out into other things in aviation maintenance? And thinking about it, do you see a lot of like your colleagues going into other things or doing other things in aviation?
Well, I know people that have gone and branched out to other things. They do MTA, they've gone to Con Edison, they've gone to a bunch of different areas. They do general aviation. Some do like inspections on the side. Some guys buy their own planes, they fix them, they fly them. Some guys go into becoming pilots. So there's a lot of different avenues that this job could lead you into and provide you an opportunity for. I personally like the commercial aviation industry. I see myself staying there for now because I still love what I do. That's what I tell people. If you love what you do, they say when you love what you do, you never work. I think you still work, but it's fun. You never regret it. Like, oh, for the next 8-10 hours, I have to be here. No, you love it. So I always tell people, do what you love and the money will come after.
Oh, you too. I know you have a lot of aspirations and things that you want to accomplish in aviation maintenance. Do you see yourself, doing line maintenance, or do you kind of see yourself exercising your license in other ways, or taking possibly different opportunities in aviation maintenance?
I know Professor Dejan mentioned to me that he had a student that did something that goes well for him. So before I got into aviation maintenance, I was a partner with my dad in a company. And I always noticed that I could be my own boss, 100%. It's not easy. It comes with so much responsibilities. Everyone might say, no, it's easy. It's not. It's more than far from it. And that's actually one of the main reasons why I'm coming to A&P school, because it's just too much. But I know it's possible, and I also know that I have family that has their A&Ps, and they could always give me a hand on it. I have a bunch of friends as well, guys that I'm going to be graduating with. If we're all working for majors, and the goal ends up happening, and I'm working overnight. Listen, this plane needs maintenance. All right, I have him. I have these guys. Make some extra money on the side. I have tons of friends now that will have their A&Ps, and it's something that I could look forward to doing because it makes sense. 100% makes sense, and I'm excited about it. I see that happening within the next 5-6 years, honestly speaking. I just need my experience. I want to get experience. I don't want to just go into the field blind.
Solano, do you have a specific airline that you're kind of eyeing, or is it kind of whoever gets back to you first is the first place that you're going to be working?
You want to do
I want to
mainline?
get into the majors, yes. I do. Right now, my first choice was United. The thing is that the commute to Newark is rough, man. Second was Delta, and third was American. So once I get my A&P, whatever hires me is wherever I'm gonna go. Honestly, I'm not gonna just pick and choose. Kind of like how Manny did. Like he said that he started somewhere and then little by little he went building himself up. And I'm on the same bridge. I can't just pick whatever.
So, you have a very unique perspective in the sense that you're on the front lines, you're working line maintenance, and you see firsthand one of the busiest airports, one of the busiest airports in the country. And, how's the workload over there, or how are you seeing the hiring process at a major airline? Are they hiring as much as the news is portraying, the people may think, or is it kind of slowed down? Can they find, qualified, talented individuals to fill these spots? What do you see on your end?
I think it shows with the hiring process. I can't speak for other airlines, but I know Delta, they need people. So it's not like before where you're struggling just to get an interview. Now they're begging people, but not everybody has their license. So it's like right now we're hiring a lot of people at Delta because we're short. And they're constantly asking people to stay and do overtime and stuff, but we need more mechanics.
Jesus, have you seen a lot more A&Ps, possibly colleagues of yours, retiring? Or I know some airlines will offer packages for people kind of on the verge or getting close to retirement. Have you seen a lot of that on your end?
Yeah, every now and then Delta will offer a package. People would take it. During COVID, people would retire. And now it's kind of just been stagnant where everyone's holding on to their jobs because no one really wants to retire right now, especially with inflation and everything going on. It's not the best time to retire. So it's funny because nobody's leaving right now, and yet people are still coming on board. So it's like we're getting a lot more people than we had before.
Now, with that, I wonder, and I have to ask this question, are you guys seeing an increase in individual workloads as far as like the work packages go? Are they giving more work to A&Ps out there, or are they kind of slowing down, putting less on the packages because they know, there's not as many resources?
No, they'll try to add depending on the amount of people. Yeah, so that's why they want more people so we can get more work. And it looks better as a station. It's all about numbers. So that's really the bottom line that they care about.
Are the salaries, do the salaries match with the training that we need to go through, and the hurdles and the licenses and everything that an A&P has to do before they become an A&P? And then once you become an A&P, you still have to go over the training and continue your certifications and reoccurring training. Solano, let me ask you this: being an A&P college, coming into the field, looking at coming into things, do you kind of agree with the salaries that we're seeing out there for the average salaries that we're seeing across the board? Or do you think that they could be a little bit higher?
I do agree, but that's because when I started working, I used to work 10, 12 hours and only used to make $100 a day. So I agree very much with the wages. Some of these airlines, they're paying north of $60 an hour. Who doesn't want $60 an hour? I think it's great. You get your flight benefits, which is a plus. You get your 401k, which is the best. Dental, health insurance. It's a whole package. This is great. I think it's wonderful. I think it's fair. Obviously right now with inflation and the market, it's a little bit tougher to buy property, or it's a little bit tougher to even pay rent sometimes. But it is worth it. once everything, the assembly itself and things go down, it's gonna be well. I know that the airlines are always competitive against each other's wages as well, so it's just gonna keep going up and up and up and up. So it's great.
I'll switch it over to Jesus, and I wanted to ask Jesus. A lot of people don't necessarily make it. You could have hundreds of people in a graduating class, and just a handful of people getting their licenses. What piece of advice, or what would you tell students that are kind of in the program right now, whether it's Bourne College or any college in the country, looking to get their A&P? And we know a lot of people may face some difficulty and some challenges, particularly early on. Being a veteran, being in the field, going through A&P school, and particularly going to A&P school during a time where it was somewhat, I'd say, in my opinion, a little bit more difficult. What type of advice would you give to people that are kind of on the fence, thinking, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this. I'm not sure if we're going to, be able to get this done, get my license. I don't know how I'm going to be able to get out there and fix a plane, or maybe this is not for me.
That's tough, because I feel like, for me, I just, like you said, I just buckled down. I went and just put my head forward and kept going. What I tell people is, you have to really think about, is this something you really want to do? Because if it's not, your heart's not going to be in it, and you're not going to be good at it. So you really have to want this. The money aside, whatever, money's not going to make you happy. I've seen that before. I went from making $10 an hour in ramp to double that working at Sikorsky, and I still wasn't happy, because I was just doing the same thing over and over again. So I was like, I need to get back into the airlines. And once I found where I wanted to be, the money didn't really matter. So I was just happy to be working, doing something I loved.
You're in A&P school, you've gotten really good grades. A lot of students will look towards you for help, ask you questions, ask you for guidance. What's something that you can tell other aspiring A&Ps throughout the country, or, anywhere really?
My best piece of advice is this isn't a joke. All right. When I came in, they were talking to me about my A license and my P license and the exams, and it's not easy. It's not. There's a lot to know. There's a lot to remember, a lot to study. There's in total, with your writtens, orals, and practicals, you're probably gonna have to know somewhere between 7,000 to 8,000 questions. This isn't a joke. All right. And not only that, you really want to know what you're getting yourself into, because this is a life-threatening job if you're not doing it right. This isn't a joke, man. You're going to fix a plane. The plane comes in. There's 200 people on board, and, you have 2 hours to fix something. You got to do it right. All right? You got 200 souls on that plane. You got to get it done right. You got to make sure you're right. You got to be confident of your work. But coming into school, at least, study. You have to study. You have to take things seriously. So my mistake was, I started studying for my orals before my writtens, knowing that I was going to take my writtens first. So the best advice I can give anyone is, don't worry about the orals, 2 years after, because you're going to learn a lot of your oral questions in classes. The professors that we have, you, Saleh, Dejan, Magnowski, even Ricky, these professors, they'll give you questions. They'll give you your oral questions on exams. They'll give you oral questions in person. They'll tell you, listen, this is an oral question. Remember this. And in your notes, you'll type it down. By the time you're done with your subject, you know the 15, 20 oral questions, and then you just have to study the rest. That was my mistake. And the more you're in school, the more you understand and learn, So your writtens, on the other hand, it's a little bit different. You have to actually learn your writtens and learn the answers and study, because that's a little bit harder. The orals is just going to be, it's like, for example, you learn in hydraulics or in electricity, what is Ohm's law? That's an oral question, but you already know what it is because of the class. These are, it doesn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense to new students coming in, but it would make sense to students already like me in their third semester going into power plant. That's the best advice I could give. And don't be worried about the exams. I used to be freaking out in my first semester about these exams. I'm in my third semester, and I feel like I'm already ready to take my A. It gets easier. It really does. You know.
Something a lot of people may not realize is that once you get your license, your federal aviation maintenance licenses, your airframe, your power plant license, and you go out there and you work in the field. These companies have to send you for training on specific systems, specific aircrafts, and now you get certified on that. The training never really ends, does it, Jesus?
So it's funny, just like Solano said, it's a little crazy at first when you start your job, because like, how am I going to learn all of this? Like, there's no way. At least that's how I thought about it. I'm like, it's just trying to learn one plane, just trying to learn one system, how it works. Now you're asking me to learn all this. It is a little mind-boggling, but it's one step at a time. And no one knows everything. Even to this day, I'm still learning stuff new. So that's one thing you always gotta. There's always gonna be people who think they know it all, and that's in any job, anywhere you go. But this is a very humbling job, because even with so many years, you'll still find out, oh wow, this is new. I didn't know this. So, and that's part of the fun, to be honest, because if you know everything, then everything is boring. But learning something new every day, it makes the job so much more fun. So that's what I tell people that are new. Just take your time. You're not going to know everything in one shot, and you'll keep learning.
For you, Solano, growing up, doing manual labor, construction, physical toll on your body, very similar to aviation maintenance. I mean, I guess that kind of gives you an advantage, or kind of a leg up, because you're kind of already familiar with that type of physical work.
Before A&P school, flooring was the same thing. You rip up, you prep the floor.
Yeah.
It was the same thing every day, and it was like, I don't want to do this no more. And not only that, man, being on your knees isn't easy. It's a lot of physical hard labor. Listen, you work for a company, you work 8 hours doing, flooring in a school, public school, and you're on your knees, and then they come and tell you, yo, you want to work a double? Do you really want to work a double? Still, man, it's like you're back. Imagine being 16 hours like this all day, and then tomorrow you get 6 hours of sleep, and then tomorrow to do it all again. It's not easy, so that's the reason why I'm over it in a way. I'll still do it, but I'm over it, and I got into A&P school. I want to learn something new every day. I want to do something new every day, and that's something that John Vignowski had mentioned to me. Listen, man, you're going to do something new. For the next 10 years, every single day, you're going to be doing something new, and you're never going to get bored. So that was your problem. This is for you. It's going to be, even the bolts, every day it's going to be different planes, different people, different work. For the next 10 years, it's going to be 100% better. So I'm looking forward to it.
Just thinking about this, but working for a big mainline, one of the biggest airlines in our country, in the world, you've had to go through quite extensive training, I'm sure. Being an airline that has a mix of Boeing aircraft and Airbus aircraft, the training really never ended. Do you have a preference? Is it Boeing, Airbus? There's similarities, and then there's not. I mean, it's very similar and then different in a sense.
It's funny, when I first started, it was on Boeing. So everything you really have to work to find out what's wrong with the plane. That plane did not give you any indication. It did not want to help you at all. But I got used to it. And then we had Airbuses. I'm like, oh, this is something else new that I have to figure out. And then once I got used to Airbus, I realized Airbus is a lot easier than Boeing. And now, even more to this day, we have the Airbus A220. And that plane literally screams the fault out at you. So it takes away a lot of the troubleshooting, the thinking behind it. It's still a difficult plane, but compared to Boeing, it's so much easier. So now new guys have it a lot easier, where they don't have to. It's a good and bad, where the plane helps you out, but it takes away some of your troubleshooting.
Yeah.
It's a little annoying, but what can you do?
Really seeing where aviation maintenance is going, and the need for mechanics and the need for maintenance to be done on aircraft. Do you see, artificial intelligence, is all over the news and taking over a lot of different industries. Do you foresee AI taking over our positions, or you kind of see it assisting aviation maintenance? What's your take on artificial intelligence and innovations in aviation maintenance?
Yeah, I mean, just the direction it's heading. Probably newer planes are gonna give you a lot more information, tell you what to do, what to replace. I feel like they're trying to get it to the point where they reduce human error as much as possible. But at least that's what I think.
I think technology. I mean, it has a lot to do with it, but I feel like airlines are doing this because it might cost them more in the long run to ground a plane than for them, because maybe two mechanics have to troubleshoot.
Solano, I know we've spoken about it a little bit in class. Artificial intelligence possibly help us in certain ways. What is your take on innovations and everything coming into play or possibly coming into play in aviation maintenance?
Boeing. So if on the other hand, an Airbus, like in this instance, a 220 tells you exactly what's going on, you're gonna get to it quicker. You're gonna be able to fix it quicker. And in that instance, the airline might be saving money because less labor and less, you don't have to ground the plane. So maybe that's just my intake on it. That's just my 2 cents on it. Maybe that's my opinion as well. Again, me personally, I would love to have a troubleshooting skill.
Something, I always ask this question, but is it something that you would want to tell people about aircraft maintenance engineers that they probably have no idea about, whether it's our training or what we do on a daily basis? A lot of people have no idea. Like, you tell somebody, oh, I'm an aircraft maintenance engineer, I'm an aircraft mechanic. And like the first question they usually have is, do you fly the plane, or how do you get into that? Well, what do you fix? Do you fix the engine? Do you fix the front? Well, we fix everything. But what's your take on that?
It's funny, even to this day, like on a live flight, if I'm working, there's people that don't know what we do. And I'm like, that's interesting. They're just like, oh, who are you guys? Oh, yeah, we're the mechanics. And they're like, oh, okay. It's really like we're at the bottom because everybody knows they need their pilots. They need the ramp agents to put the bags on the flight. But nobody thinks about, oh, we need to make sure the plane's working fine. Like, the plane should automatically just be okay. Why are you here delaying my flight?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't know that there's mechanics.
And then the jokes come out with the tape, like, oh, are you guys just going to tape up the wing?
So let me ask, clueless, Let me ask you this, Jesus, I'm sorry. Let me ask you this, thinking about it, do you agree with the salaries that aircraft maintenance engineers are currently getting, on average throughout the country, or is this something, in terms of, let's make a direct comparison. I'm gonna be straightforward here. This is the CotAcasT. There's no editing on this. In terms of comparison of pilots, and firsthand, we know the systems that are predominantly in use throughout the flight. We know that we need to learn everything that the pilots need to learn, and not only that, but we need to know the science behind every system. We need to know how to troubleshoot the systems. We need to know how to repair the systems, operationally check the systems. I mean, do you agree with the title aircraft mechanic? I mean, at this point, aircraft maintenance engineer. What is your take on it, Jesus?
Well, it's funny because I feel like the title and in terms of our pay, I feel like there's always been a great disparity between pilots and mechanics. And a lot of people don't know what pilots actually do. And don't get me wrong, I always feel like a lot of people say pilots are overpaid. But I feel like in an emergency, you have to have ice water in your veins to deal with what pilots do. But on the normal basis, it's not much. And you know that as well. Like, pilots don't really do much. But I feel like the pay is super inflated compared to what they actually do, compared to mechanics. And don't get me wrong, I'll never complain about my salary, but I always feel like, in general, mechanics should get paid more for what we do. I feel like it goes a little underappreciated, and I think that's across the board. I think we're just like, all right, here you go, grease monkey, fix it.
Heads up, an aviation maintenance school, college, right? I mean, I went to one college as well. And, as Jesus had mentioned, before, it's, yeah, aviation maintenance, it was kind of something that was, made to seem like it wasn't an easy task. And we were certainly told that quite often. And I guess maybe that just kind of pushed us towards being, better. Where, when you think about it, Jesus, where do when we think about aviation maintenance, is it what is it somewhat different than what we were kind of, anticipating? I would say so.
Well, I haven't been there recently, but I know back then it was a little daunting. Like, the professors make it seem like, hey, you picked the wrong career. But here, let's start the class. And so it's like, wait, what? And you hear all the horror stories of like people losing limbs and how dangerous the job is, and it is dangerous. But they don't really go into the fact that it's a fun job. So I had no idea this job would be fun because of what they taught me. It made it seem like you're making a big mistake.
Before we end this, I wanted to speak to Solano a little bit on a personal note and some things that we do. A&Ps do have lives when we're not working. A&Ps are typically working like 80 hours a week, whether they're like 2 jobs, 3 jobs, just making money, become addicted. But personally, what do you do to relax? So I'm gonna go to Solano. I know that we've spoken about it before. We do a lot of similar things. I enjoy fishing. I enjoy the outdoors, going out, staying active. What do you do to relax and get your mind off aviation when you need a little bit of a break?
Either out of Captree State Park, there's a couple fishing boats. I grew up fishing out of Sheepshade Bay on the Brooklyn 6. I'm actually still friends with the owner and his son, which is my age. They actually have their commercial licenses, and around December I go out fishing with them all the time for blackfish. I love fishing, man. It's something. Before I got into A&P school, I was fishing probably 3 to 4 times a week. Right after work, I would do a lot of overnight work because I was doing CVSs. I would get out of work at 4 or 5 in the morning. I'd have my fishing rod in the truck, and I'd go straight fishing.
The veteran now, Jesus, what do you do to unwind after a very stressful, very long week or day? What do you do?
It's funny because I know people that love talking about aviation even outside of work. That's not me. like, it's funny. People ask me what I do. I just say I'm a mechanic. I don't even mention aircraft maintenance or whatever. So, because I'm like, I don't want to explain. And, if they ask me, that's fine. Well, I'm just like, yeah. It's funny. Sometimes I would joke around and be like, what? I just don't work. And I just live off my wife. I just to see people's reactions and stuff. But I love spending time with like my family, like my dog, my wife, with friends, just catching up because like life is so busy now that you don't really have time for friends on the consistent basis like we did when we were younger. So it's good to catch up every now and then, and that's usually how I spend my time.
Greatest things about being an aircraft maintenance engineer or working for aviation, you get the opportunity to travel for free. It's a perk, whether you're on standby or purchasing a ticket at a great discount. Have you had the opportunity, Jesus, to travel and see the world, or you have been just too busy in the aviation life and working?
So it's funny, when I first started, I didn't care about traveling or anything like that. I just wanted to learn because I didn't want to be traveling the world and I still don't know what I'm doing when I go back to work. So I was like, let me relax a bit. So I think it was like a few years in, and people would ask me, oh, I've been to all these places. Where have you been? I'm like, not much. But now I try to travel a little more often because I want to see different parts of the world. And especially the last few years, I've been traveling more often. So it's fun because yeah, it's standby life, and a lot of people don't understand how difficult that is. But it's also a great benefit because you're not spending so much on flights like a normal person would. I've been places I thought I would never be.
Yeah.
So I owe that to being in the aviation industry. I'm like, okay, flying around, whatever. But when you actually do it, it's like, wow. And I remember there's guys that would tell me the best way to spend your money is traveling. And I'm like, why? And then when you realize it, the experiences you get, it's like the memories are amazing. So
Yeah.
it's a cool feeling to be able to do something you love and then take advantage of that and travel the world. And it's cool.
I know you do a bit of traveling yourself. I know that that's something that you're probably going to benefit from, having perks like that in aviation maintenance. Is that something that you've had your eyes set on for quite a bit, or is it something that you're like, well, when I get there, we'll figure it out? And what's your take on being able to travel? Are you going to be able to utilize that?
So my girlfriend loves to travel. Her and her family, they have traveled literally. And when I started dating her, we've been dating for years, or we've been dating for 6 years, but about 2 or 3 years ago, she told me we should start traveling, or you should start traveling a little bit more because you're up for it now. I was a little bit more settled down than I was when I was 18, 19, obviously. I was a little bit more mature as well. So I decided, all right, let's give it a shot. So that year, she told me that around January, and that year, I took 11 flights. Yeah, man, I was doing even there was this one time, and this is what I love about flight benefits. I was working, I was mixing cement, and he gives me a call. I'm like, hello, and he's like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? And I'm like, oh man, nothing as of right now. I have nothing planned. He's like, all right, well, there's a flight leaving to New Orleans in 3 hours. Do you want to leave? And I'm like, okay. So I stopped mixing cement. I left the cement in the bucket and I ran home to pack. All right, that was, it's just the wonderful thing about having flight benefits, We enjoyed the weekend. We got back, and I went straight to work. So it's going to be great. I'm going to enjoy it. Do I see myself traveling more? Yes. Places where I do want to travel, I want to go to Japan. That's one of them.
Oh, yeah.
Japan is probably on my bucket list, on my number one bucket list, for the car scenery, because I'm very much into cars. Yeah, and my second would probably be, as of right now, Peru, Machu Picchu. Something I would really like to do.
That I wanted to access Jesus and Solano, but we're gonna, we'll have them back on the show at some point. But now thinking, one of the questions I had, I just wanted to pick one off the top of my head. But when we think about aviation maintenance going forward, we spoke about innovations, artificial intelligence coming into play. Do you foresee, we know that autopilots are predominantly doing most of the work right now. Sorry for the pilots and people that don't agree listening, but it's the truth. But do you foresee maybe possibly an A&P replacing the pilots in a flight deck? An A&P is somebody that not only understands everything the pilots do, but we can also fix and troubleshoot everything that every system there. Do you see us possibly replacing human pilots anytime in the near future, or maybe 20, 30 years from now?
It's funny because, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago we didn't think a lot of people are going to be driving electric cars, You'd be like, oh, that sounds like a dumb idea. So I can't say I don't think we'll ever get rid of a jet engine, but, it's possible. I don't know what the engineers are thinking up, but I don't see it anytime soon. But I feel like they do want to lean towards being more eco-friendly. I think they do want to lean towards that. You see all these planes coming up with new ideas, trying to become more fuel efficient. So they're always going to try to lean towards better response. It looks better anyway, for every company to be the first to be more fuel efficient. So I feel like maybe not soon, but eventually.
I don't think big batteries have gone along with the planes that, I don't know. It would be something really interesting to see how engineers would make it, but I want to work on it. Maybe not.
Was there something, being out there on the line? I always ask this question as well. Is there something that you wish could be invented or something that could be put into use to kind of assist or help you, on your nightly tasks or make, routine maintenance tasks a little bit easier,
That's a good question because you come across it every now and then when you're doing a job, and like, man, if we had something for this, it would be so much easier. Uh, it's funny, it's hard to pinpoint it, but there's always something that you're looking at, like, man, why is this job so difficult? Or why did they design it this way to make it? Why did they put this bolt here where it's hard to reach and you can't even see it? You just have to feel around.
Right.
And it's like, but yeah, I feel like there's always new tools coming out that they might try to invent. Sometimes you have to make your own and like just
Yes.
find a way to MacGyver it and just finish the job because, and that's the cool thing too because there's always a tool to make your job easier. And like I'm telling him, you're gonna buy a whole bunch of tools and you're gonna think, oh, I finally got everything, and then you
Yeah.
see another mechanic like, oh wow, that's a lot easier. All right, now I can buy that. I just bought more tools recently, and it was like 6 months ago where I bought a lot of tools and I stopped. I'm like, okay, I'm good for now. And now I just bought a few more things. I'm like, oh my god. But it does help you in the long run because you want your job to be easier. So
A lot of tools now, Jesus. Is there like a specific type? I know, Craftsman's always been pretty good as far as like multimeter, small things like that. Snap-on is very expensive, but good for certain things. Ratcheting screwdriver, ratcheting stubby, gear wrench. I mean, is there something specific that you've kind of, grown accustomed to buying and something that works out for you, or you kind of just, you got a little bit of everything?
it's funny. I started with Craftsman a lot. I think a lot of people did. Um, and now my personal favorite is Gear Wrench.
Me too.
I love Gear Wrench. Craftsman's still good. Even Tecton.
I love Tecton.
There are certain tools that I feel like it's only Snap-on makes it the best. But I know guys that have all Snap-on and they never use their tools. So,
Right?
yes, it's always that
I
guy.
always say that.
Yeah, but and don't get me wrong, Snap-on is great, but to spend all that money on Snap-on, I think it's overdoing it, and it's just unnecessary. But to each his own.
As of right now, I only have one thing from Snap-on coming in, and it's my ratcheting screwdriver. That's it. Other than that, I just actually got my Pelican box. I have Gear Wrench, and I have Tecton. Those are probably going to be the two brands that I use throughout my whole career, either Tecton and Gear Wrench. They Gear Wrench has an aviation package for students. Imagine, price is a little bit heftier, but of course Snap-on is great. Nevertheless, I do own some small tools from them, and they're great. But Tecton also, man, the warranty on it, the customer service, they're great, and they're not that expensive. Yeah, dude, I lost a bit. No, when I ordered, a bit didn't come in onto the package. I called them, and they express mailed it to me. I got it within 12 hours.
Type of service that I love. But we've run out of time. It was such I could keep talking to Solano and Jesus for a while. We're definitely going to have them back on the show and very, very soon on the CotAcasT. Once again, I really appreciate you guys coming on. Jesus, Solano, thank you so much. I thank the listeners for listening to this episode of the CotAcasT. Guys, if you have not done so already, please take this opportunity to visit the Craft of the Air website at www.craftoftheair.com. Again, that's www.craftoftheair.com today, and learn everything that Craft of the Air can do for you. Craft of the Air, our craft is of the air. Guys, if you haven't had the opportunity yet, you can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. You can watch or listen. Make sure you subscribe and send the link to everybody you know in aviation. Thanks again for listening, guys. If you guys have any questions, comments, want to be on a future episode, or sponsorship opportunities, want to put your business name out there, let's get in touch. Visit that Craft of the Air website at www.craftoftheair.com and put in the subject CotAcasT. Thanks again for listening, guys. Thanks again for Susan and Solano for coming on the show. I hope you guys have a great day. Be safe, and we'll be seeing you soon.